Entering the UK. Before you leave for the UK, check what you need to do before you leave for the UK. You cannot currently enter the UK if you've been in or through the country on the banned travel list, sometimes known as the red list, in the last 10 days, unless you are British, Irish, or you have the right to live in the UK. Book your coronavirus test and find out how to quarantine. If you're traveling to England, you must take 2 coronavirus COVID-19 tests after you arrive in England. You'll need to book this before you travel. Either quarantine in the place you're staying or in a managed quarantine hotel for 10 days when you arrive in England. What you need to do depends on where you travel in the 10 days before you arrive in England. If you travel in or through the country on the banned travel list, sometimes called the red list, in those 10 days you will need to quarantine in a managed quarantine hotel. If you do not travel in or through the country on the banned travel list in those 10 days, you will need to quarantine in the place you are staying. Provide your contact details. You need to provide your journey and contact details in the 48 hours before you arrive in the UK. You must do this by completing the online passenger locator form. You need to show proof that you've completed the form when you arrive at the UK border. Provide a negative coronavirus test to travel to the UK. You must have proof of a negative coronavirus test to travel to the UK, even if you are a UK citizen. If your test result is positive, you must not travel. You must follow the local coronavirus rules and guidance. The test must be taken in the 3 days before you depart. The result must be in English, French, or Spanish. You'll need to show the test results when you check in to travel or board your plane, train, or ferry. You may also be asked to show them when you arrive. You could be fined £500 when you arrive at the border if you cannot provide proof that you have had a negative coronavirus test. When you do not need to provide a negative coronavirus test, you do not need a test if you are traveling within the UK, the Isles of Man, Jersey, and Guernsey, from Ireland, from Ascension, Falkland Islands, or St. Helena. Children under 11 do not need a test. There are other reasons you might not need a test. For example, you have a job on the Accept Jobs list. You're traveling to the UK for medical reasons. You're traveling from the country where you cannot access testing facilities. Read the guidance about taking a coronavirus test before you travel to England or Scotland. You must still follow the rules for self-isolating when you arrive in the UK. You are from an EEA country or Switzerland. You can enter the UK with either a passport or a national identity card issued by an EEA country or Switzerland that should be valid for the whole of your stay. From the 1st of October 2021, you will not be able to use an EEA or Swiss national identity card to enter the UK unless you have settled or pre-settled status under the EU settlement scheme, have an EU stayment scheme family permit, have a frontier worker permit, are an as to healthcare visitor, are a Swiss service provider. Check if you need a visa to come to the UK after the 1st of January 2021. You are not from an EEA country. You must have a valid passport to enter to the UK. It should be valid for the whole of your stay. You may also need a visa depending on which country you are from. Check if you need a visa to enter the UK. You may also need a visa if you are transiting or traveling through the UK. For example, you are changing flights at the UK airport. Applying for a visa. You must apply for your visa before you arrive in the UK. Traveling with children. You may be asked at the border to prove the relationship between yourself and any children traveling with you if you do not seem to be the parent. For example, if you have a different surname, you can prove this with a birth or adoption certificate showing your relationship with the child. Divorce or marriage certificates if you are the parents but have a different surname from the child. A letter from the child's parents giving permission for the child to travel with you and providing contact details if you are lost a parent before you board. Your carrier will check your passport and other travel documents. They will send this information electricity to broader force. You can ask to see the information about you that's been sent by carriers. You have to pay a £10 fee. How to quarantine when you arrive in England. What to do before and after you arrive in England, including staying at home or ordering coronavirus COVID-19 tests. From 15 February onwards, everyone allowed to enter England from outside the common travel area must quarantine for 10 days, take a coronavirus COVID-19 test on day 2 and day 8 of quarantining, or follow the national lockdown rules. You should follow separate advice if you need to quarantine in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. What you must do before you travel. Anyone must take a coronavirus COVID-19 test and get a negative result during the 3 days before you travel. Book and pay for a travel test package, which will include COVID-19 tests to be taken on or before day 2 and on or after day 8 of your quarantine. Complete a passenger locator form with details of where you will home quarantine when you arrive and the travel test package booking reference number, providing false or deliberately misleading information when filling out your passenger locator form is an offense punishable by imprisonment. You could be fined up to £10,000, imprisoned for up to 10 years, or both if you do not provide accurate details about the countries you have visited in the 10 days before you arrive in the UK. If you break the quarantine rules, you may face a penalty of up to £10,000. If you be traveling from somewhere in the common travel area, Ireland and Channel Islands and the Isle of Man, and you have not left the common travel area for the past 10 days, you do not need a test before leaving or to home quarantine and take tests after arriving. Get a test before traveling. You must have proof of a negative coronavirus test to travel to England. This includes UK citizens. You must take the test in the 3 days before the service on which you will arrive in England departs. For example, if you travel directly to England on Friday, you must take the test on the Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. See the jobs with testing travel exemptions to find out whether your job qualifies for an exception and what that exception covers. You may need to show evidence of the work you will be doing at the border. Book your travel testing package. Everyone must book a travel test package. This costs £210. You must take a COVID-19 test on or before day 2 for variant surveillance, and a test on or after day 8 to check that you do not have COVID-19. If you are facing significant financial hardship as a result of this charge, there will be an opportunity to pay later in installments by applying for a deferred repayment plan when booking. This is only available if you already receive income-related benefits, and you will be required to pay back for your debts to the government in 12 monthly installments. You must not apply for deferred payments if you are not eligible. If you provide false information or omit key information which has been asked for in your application, you will be committing fraud, committing fraud and liable for conviction. You will not be able to leave quarantine until you have received both a negative results from your day 8 test and quarantine for 10 days. If you do not take the test, you may face a penalty of up to £2,000. If you test positive for either test, you must quarantine for a further 10 days from the day you took the test. You will receive further advice alongside your test results. If your test shows that you have a variant of coronavirus known as a variant of concern, you will get a further call and your contact will be asked to be tested. Provide details of where you will quarantine when you arrive. Passenger locator form. Before you travel to England, you must provide your journey, contact details, and the address where you will quarantine by completing the passenger locator form. You must do this within the 48 hours before you arrive. You must provide a test package booking reference number to complete your passenger locator form. You may be asked to show these details to immigration officers when you arrive. If you provide false or deliberately misleading information, you may be fined or imprisoned. Quarantine for 10 days after you arrive. When you arrive in England, you must travel directly to the place you are staying and not leave until 10 days have passed. The quarantine period starts the day you arrive in England and ends 10 days after the day you arrive. This period is necessary because it can take up to 10 days for coronavirus symptoms to appear. If you're traveling to England for less than 10 days, you will need to quarantine for the whole of your stay. You must travel directly to your place of quarantine when you arrive in England and directly from your place of quarantine to the port or airport when you leave. You should follow safer travel guidance and avoid public transport if possible. If you break the quarantine rules, you may face a penalty of up to £10,000. How to travel to the place where you are quarantining. When you arrive in England, go straight to the place you are staying to quarantine. Only use public transport if you have no other options. If you do use public transport, you must take all safety precautions to prevent the risk of virus transmission. These include keeping your distance and observing social contact rules, washing and sanitizing your hands regularly, wearing a face covering that covers your nose and mouth. This is required by law unless you accept. Planning ahead and avoiding the business rules, as well as busy times like the rush hour. downloading the NHS COVID-19 app before you travel, if possible, and checking in where you see official NHS COVID-19 QR code posters. If you have coronavirus symptoms, it is important that you do not travel by public transport. If you develop coronavirus symptoms when you are traveling to England, you should tell one of the crew on your phone, boat, train, or bus. They will let staff in the airport, port, or station know so they can tell you what you should do next when you arrive. Non-journeys to your quarantine accommodation. If you have a long journey within the UK to arrive at the place where you will be quarantining, you may be able to stop overnight in accommodation where you can quarantine yourself from others before continuing your journey. Before doing so, you should check that the overnight stay is necessary and permitted under the national lockdown stay at home rules. If so, you must quarantine and provide address your overnight stop on your passenger locator form in addition to your declared accommodation address. What you can and cannot do in quarantine. Quarantine can include staying in your own home with friends or family, in a hotel or other temporary accommodation that is not a managed quarantine hotel. You must quarantine in one place for the full quarantine period, where you can have food and other necessities delivered. You must quarantine as the address you provided on the passenger locator form. Visitors. You cannot have visitors, including friends and family, unless they are providing emergency assistance, care or assistance, including personal care, medical assistance, uh, veterinary, veterinary service. Veterinary service, certain critical public service, going out, you cannot leave the premise when you are in quarantine. You cannot go out to work or school. You cannot visit family or friends who do not live in the premise where you quarantine. You must only exercise inside the place where you are quarantining or garden. You cannot leave the place where you are quarantining to walk your dog. You will need to ask friends or relatives to help you with this. You must not go shopping. If you need help buying groceries, order shopping, or picking up medication, you should ask friends or relatives or order a delivery or ask for help from NHS volunteer responders. You can leave to escape risk of harm, for example, domestic abuse. NHS volunteer responders are available if you need help collecting shopping, medication, or would like a telephone check-in and chat. Call 0808 196 3646. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to arrange support. You can arrange one-off support or schedule more regular help while you are quarantining. Jobs that mean you do not have to quarantine. You do not need to quarantine if your job is on the list of jobs that are exceptional circumstance. You may also be allowed to leave your accommodation in exceptional circumstance. This includes purposes such as accessing basic necessities like food and medical and medicines where you cannot arrange for these to be delivered. Accessing critical public service, including social service and service provided to victims, such as victims of crime. Moving to a different place for quarantine where you can no longer remain where you are. There may be other exceptional circumstances which permit you to lift your place of quarantine. You will need to consider carefully whether your circumstances are exceptional circumstances that require you to leave your place of quarantine. You could seek advice from a medical or other professional to discuss your circumstance so that you can decide whether, for example, you have a health condition or a disability that would be seriously exacerbated if you were ex- exa- ex- exacerbated if you were not able to leave the accommodation and its outdoor areas where you are quarantining to take exercise. Even if you have an exception, you must continue to follow the general restrictions that apply. What do you do if you get coronavirus symptoms? You should order a test if you develop at least one of these three coronavirus symptoms at any point: a high temperature, a new contagious cough, you've lost your sense of smell or taste, or it's changed. If you develop coronavirus symptoms when you are traveling to England, you should tell one of the crew on your plane, boat, train, or bus. They will let staff in the airport, port, or station know so they can tell you what you should do next when you arrive. Rules for the people you stay with. The people you are staying with do not need to quarantine unless they traveled with you. You or someone in the place where you are staying develops symptoms or coronavirus. As far as possible, avoid contact with other people in the place where you are quarantining to reduce the risk of transmitting coronavirus. You should stay in a ventilated room with an outside window that can be opened, separate from other people in your home. If you are staying in a hotel or guest house, you must stay away from others who did not travel with you, so it is important that you do not use shared areas such as bars, restaurants, health clubs, and sports facilities. Stay 2 meters apart from other people staying there at all times. Supposed to help you quarantine. Quarantining may be difficult, frustrating, or lonely, but there are things that you can do to help make staying at home easier. NHS volunteer responders are also available if you need help connecting, shopping, or medication. You'd like a friendly chat. Call 0808-196-3646 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to arrange support. You can arrange one-off support or schedule more regular help while you're quarantining. Testing in quarantine. Day 2 test. You will need to take a COVID-19 test on or before day 2 of your quarantine period. The day of arrival in England will be treated as day 0. This first test is designed to help identify any potentially harmful variants of COVID-19 as the earliest opportunity. Tests will be taken in your own accommodation. If you get a positive result from your day 2 test, you must quarantine for 10 days beginning the day after the test was taken. This means until day 13. Your household will also need to quarantine until day 13. If you get a positive result from your day 2 test, you do not need to take a test on day 8. Day 8 test. You need to take a COVID-19 test on or after day 8. Unless you got a positive result from your day 2 test. If you get a positive test result from your day 8 test, you will need to quarantine until day 19. Your household will also need to quarantine until day 19. Ending quarantine. If your quarantined for 10 days and got a negative result to both your day 2 and day 8 tests, you may list the place where you are quarantining. You can see if you can end your quarantine early through the test to release scheme below. Children under 5 do not need to take the day 2 or day 8 test. Ending your quarantine early test to release. You can still use the test to release for international travel scheme. The scheme needs to choose to pay for a private COVID-19 test. If the result is negative, you can stop quarantining. You cannot take a test until you have been in England for 5 full days. The scheme is voluntary and applies to those quarantining in England only. If you do not want to opt into the test to release scheme, you will need to self-isolate for 10 days. You cannot use the test to release scheme if you have been in or through any country that is on the travel ban at least in the 10 days before you arrive in England. If you are planning to use the test to release scheme, you must still take a test on or before the day 2 and on or after day 8, unless you accept. Even if you get a negative result from your test release and are released from self-isolation, you still need to take a test on or after day 8 to check that you do not have COVID-19. Changing the place where you are quarantining. You are not allowed to change the place where you are quarantining except in very limited circumstances, including where a legal obligation requires you to change address, such as when you are a child whose parents live separately and you need to move between homes as part of a shared custody agreement. It is necessary to permissible for you to stay overnight as accommodation before traveling to the place where you will be quarantining for the remaining period. In this happens, you must provide full details of each address where you will quarantine on the passenger locator form. If in exceptional circumstance, you cannot remain where you are staying, you can move to a new place to quarantine and you must complete a new passenger locator form as soon as possible. Leaving quarantine. You will be able to leave quarantine when you have received both a negative results from your day 8 test and have quarantined for 10 full days. You can also end your quarantine early through the test release scheme. Once you leave quarantine, you must still follow the national restrictions that apply. Circumstances not covered by this guidance. If you are intending to travel to the UK in the next 7 days and facing a set of circumstances that are not covered by this guidance, please email your inquiry to the below link. Please make sure you include your date of travel.